Salve, Skipperly. Alright, today we're going to look at the first installment of grammar for lesson 44. And what you guys are going to learn here is the imperfect subjunctive. Ooh, that sounds exciting. So we already learned the present subjunctive. So that means we learned this thing called the subjunctive mood in the present tense. Now we're going to learn the subjunctive mood in the imperfect tense. Okay? So the subjunctive, like we discussed with the present subjunctive, the subjunctive just means that this is something uncertain. You don't know for sure if it's going to happen or not. That's the basic idea. It's not certain. Okay? So let's talk first about the form of the imperfect subjunctive. I often say that the imperfect subjunctive is one of the easiest forms in all of Latin to learn. Okay? It's really pretty easy for the most part. I've included a few different verbs. Amo, amare, amavi, amatum, video, videre, vidi, visum, sum, esse, fui, futurus, and possum, possa, potui. The good news about the imperfect subjunctive is the rules for its formation are the same no matter the conjugation of the verb. Even if the verb is irregular, like sum and possum are, the rules for how you form it are the same. The very first thing you do is you take the second principal part, the infinitive, okay? You start with that, and then you're going to add your personal endings. For the active voice, MST, mus, tis, unt. For the passive voice, aristur, more, mini, untur. So you end up with, something like this. Amarem, mares, amaret, amaremus, amaretus, amarent. So each one has a mare in there. And then I add MST, mus, tis, unt. Alright, that's all there is to it. If I were forming it in the passive voice, I would once again start with my infinitive, videre, and then I would add aristur, more, mini, untur. Viderer, videreris, which is hard to say. Videretur, videремor, videремini, viderentur. So each one of these has videre right in there. And then aristur, more, mini, untur added to it. So that's the passive voice of the imperfect subjunctive. Okay, so again, the imperfect subjunctive always starts with the second principal part. Okay, now, even when we get to irregular words like sum and possum, we still follow the same rules. We start with the second principal part, then we add the endings. You end up with SM, asses, asset, assemus, assetus, assent. That's it. This is the imperfect subjunctive of the word to be. For the imperfect of possum, once again, we start with the second principal part, possa, then add our endings. Possem, possess, posset, possemus, possetus, possent. That's it. Notice again, each one of these has the infinitive, possa, right in there. Okay, now you'll notice I haven't talked about translation whatsoever. We're going to do that in a second. We're going to see this in action, and then we'll talk about translation. Okay? If you need a break, now's a good time to pause it and walk away, because I'm sort of changing topics at this point. So pause if you like. Alright, so let's take a look at the imperfect subjunctive in action. The imperfect subjunctive is going to show up in what we call a purpose clause. This is one possible place it will show up. This is what we're going to learn for today. A purpose clause. Purpose clause, guess what it does? It expresses purpose. That makes very good sense. For example, if I say something like, I go to the store to buy groceries, the purpose of going to the store is to buy groceries. So that is a purpose clause. All right. I swung a sword to kill my enemy. All right. Why did I swing the sword? To kill my enemy. That's going to be a purpose clause in Latin. All right. Purpose clauses in Latin will be formed with one of these two words, ut or ne, and then they will have a subjunctive verb. Okay? So if I want to say I'm going to the store to get groceries, I would use ut and a subjunctive verb to express to get groceries. If I wanted to say I ducked so that I might not be hit by the sword, alright, my purpose for ducking is to not be hit by the sword, I would use ne and a subjunctive verb. So let's look at this in action. Okay, let's consider this sentence right here. Se armat ut puerim terreat. Okay, so you'll notice we have two verbs in this clause. Shoot. Sorry guys, I need my ink. There we go. Okay, so we have two verbs in this clause. We have armat and we have terreat. Alright, so we have two different clauses. They're going to divide right at the ut here. The ut starts a new clause. In fact, the ut is going to start a purpose clause. So armatse means he arms himself. He arms himself. Notice terreat over here, this is a present tense subjunctive. Right? The we beat a liar friar. So he arms himself so that he might scare the boy. Alright, that's one way to translate this purpose clause. He arms himself in order to scare the boy. That's another way to translate this purpose clause. He arms himself so that he might scare the boy. That's another way to translate this purpose clause. There are lots of possibilities. Alright? You'll notice, even though this is present subjunctive, we're not translating it like a hortatory. We're not doing that let the subject verb business we learned last lesson. This is different. This is a subjunctive in a purpose clause. This is not a hortatory subjunctive. Okay? Now, let's consider number two. Number two is basically the same sentence, except this time we have past tense verbs. We have armawit, which is perfect tense, and that forces us to use an imperfect subjunctive instead of a present subjunctive. Alright? So now this sentence means he armed himself so that he might frighten the boy. Okay? You'll notice, even though this is imperfect subjunctive, we basically translated it the same way as our present subjunctive up here. He arms himself so that he might frighten the boy. He armed himself so that he might frighten the boy. He armed himself in order to frighten the boy. Those are all possible translations. Okay, the only reason we have an imperfect subjunctive down here is we have a past tense verb here. We have a present subjunctive here because we have a present tense verb here. Alright, let's consider number three. Equos incetabam ut celerius currerent. Alright, we have two main verbs. Can you guys find the two main verbs? I knew you could. Incetabam, currerent. Whoa, a little sloppy there. I can't stand that. I gotta fix that. Gotta fix it. Alright, there we go. There it is. Alright, so two main verbs. That means we have two clauses. Where are we going to divide our clause? At the ut. Okay? So this says, I was urging on the horses. So this is another purpose clause. I was urging on the horses so that they might run more swiftly. Okay? Why did I urge on the horses? So that they might run more swiftly. I was urging on the horses in order to run more swiftly. I was urging on the horses so that they might run more swiftly. Those are all acceptable translations. Notice we have an imperfect subjunctive here, right, with the infinitive right in there, with that second principal part right there, because we have a past tense verb over here. Consider sentence 4. Okay, two main verbs again. This time we have a future tense verb here and a present subjunctive here. I will urge on the horses so that they might run more swiftly. Okay, so same idea, I've just changed the tenses. I will urge on the horses so that they might run more swiftly. Alright, notice there are lots of ways to translate these, and I'm not giving you just one possible way. There are multiple ways that work. Let's consider number 5. We're almost done here, by the way. In katabam equos ut carerimus. So we got in katabam again. We've got carerimus. We've got ut starting a new clause, specifically starting a purpose clause. Note the imperfect subjunctive here, because that ere. Notice there's a change in subject. This is mus. This is am. So the subject of in katabam is I. The subject of carerimus is we. So I was urging on the horses so that we might run. Alright, get the idea? So it's very common to have it's very common to have subject changes. Alright? Subject changes are acceptable. Won't always happen. Doesn't happen up here, but a lot of times it will happen. I was urging on the horses so that we might run. Okay, we're going to look at 2 more examples. Down here we've got pugnamus and interficiantur. Our clause divides here at the ne. This is a negative purpose clause now. Notice the ia. This is a present subjunctive. Pugnamus. Notice the mus. We fight so that the citizens are not killed. Or we fight so that the citizens might not be killed. Okay? Consider number 7, and you'll notice a pattern here. Pugnavimus ne cives interficerentur. Notice the ere here from the second principal part. Divide this into 2 clauses. This time it's past tense, perfect tense over here, and imperfect subjunctive over here. We fought so that the citizens might not be killed. Alright, we fought so that the citizens might not be killed. Okay, that's the deal. Those are your purpose clauses. So far, that's the only time you will see the imperfect subjunctive. More possibilities will arise soon, but for right now, your imperfect subjunctive will show up in a purpose clause. Okay, just make sure you've taken notes on what I've described here, and you should be ready for tomorrow. Waleta.